Hello, and thank you for joining me on the Innovate, Thrive Other podcast, where I dig into all things small business. I'm really excited you're here, and I can't wait to explore the realities of running a business with you. This week, I'm joined by Alice Benham to talk about strategic hiring, what it means, and the approach we take. So a huge welcome to Alice. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I feel like anytime we get to chat about business, it's always such a joy. So it's just exciting it's on your new podcast.
I know, and it kind of feels full circle because this time last year, I was on your podcast, which really helped my business to grow. I'm not going to lie. So it feels fitting that you're now my first guest.
Well, thank you. And as I said before we hit record, your episode on my podcast, I think is the number 2 downloaded out of, I think, 140 episodes. So
nice.
People like what you have to bring. So I'm excited that you've got your own podcast now.
Thank you.
We can share more of that.
Yes. Let's dive in then, shall we? Let's get going. Get the first episode underway. So, question that I'm going to ask every guest at the beginning of the episode. So would you say that you and or your business are innovating, thriving, or other this week?
I would definitely have to say we're in innovation mode at the moment. Doesn't quite line up with what I thought January would be like. My whole thing for this year was like, we're not adding anything new. Like, we're just doing the thriving, we're sustaining. But January has been innovation central. I think I'm currently on launch number 3 of the month. So that's an experience. But yeah, there's lots of new going on right now. I'm in the process of launching my new course. So I feel like that fits into the innovation category.
And your course that you're launching is about launching.
Yes, incredibly meta. It's a very strange thing to be launching. But yeah, helping people to launch better, which feels strange because then I think, well, if my launch is bad, it's not a very good sales pitch for the course where I teach people how to launch. So it's all a bit meta.
Definitely putting yourself out there, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So definitely in the innovating category, but definitely looking forward to a period of thriving. I keep telling myself February. I don't know if I'm lying to myself, but we'll see.
And how does innovating feel? Like doing 3 launches in a month, how is that feeling right now?
I mean, it's a choice, right? I'm always careful with my business not to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted, as if I'm like a victim of, it's me deciding to do all of this stuff. Yeah. So it's very exciting, bringing new stuff to life. The other 2 launches was a product range and a new podcast. So both of those, like, privileged to do those things in my business and to help people in that way. I guess that is balanced with it's pretty tiring. Any season of launch, you are at your maximum energy and output. So I'm definitely feeling worn out. I'm not sure I could do another 3 launches after this. But because it's something I'm so excited about, I think I'm just feeling carried by that. And the end is in sight. That's what I like to see with launching. It's not, I couldn't innovate all the time, but I do love these like push seasons where it's, definitely pretty full on. And then you get to slow down and do the thriving and for a little bit.
I think that is sort of the premise of innovating and thriving, or just running a business, is you have times where you're expending the energy and doing new things and trying things out and pushing and innovating. And then you get to enjoy the fruits of that labor. And at that point, the innovation is literally just learning, watching, waiting, and sort of like recording all of that data so that you can then have another season a bit down the line. But it's certainly like a cyclical event, I suppose, isn't it? You don't want to be doing it all the time. Equally, you couldn't thrive all the time if you do nothing new. So to go round and round.
Yeah. And that's been a huge learning curve in my business. I think in the early days, I thought there'd be a point where the innovation would end. Like you innovate until you get to your finished business, finished in quotation marks, and then you just go, cool, let's now sustain and, just tweak stuff. But in my experience, exactly like you said, you do a season of innovation, then you thrive. And then, you're always itching, aren't you, to get back into that innovation period after a while. And it just keeps going. Like, I don't feel like my business will ever stop being in that cycle. And I guess now that's something I've learned to love rather than find exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good thing, I think. I would say, like, for me this week, all my days, I am definitely in the other camp. I don't feel like I'm innovating or thriving. I've just moved house. And like speak, my camera is up this high because on the floor around me are boxes. And like 2 minutes before we recorded, I sat here thinking, where on earth is my microphone? And that basically sums up my week, is, just where on earth is anything, and a lot of cleaning and moving. And yeah, it's been a week.
I think I didn't understand how, when people said like, oh, I'm moving, I'm like, oh, that's nice. Like, I quite like organization. That must be a nice project. And then I moved into this house and I was like, flip, this is a procedure and it is exhausting. I have total props. I mean, you were like moving over the weekend while still running your business. I don't think I could do that.
We did 4 days of physically moving and 3, because we rent at the moment. So 3 days of cleaning the old place, and obviously mid-lockdown we can't have any help, so we've done it all on our own. Broken would be probably my other.
I feel like you need to add a 4th category in. After this, you get to just relax, and then you get back into the innovation or the thriving. I feel like you need a rest before you go to the next season.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe that is part of thriving as well, is that we look after ourselves when we need, even if that means doing nothing.
Yes. I mean, what else can you do these days, right? It's the best thing to do.
I'm so happy we're coming out of moving into lockdown, because we literally can't go anywhere anyway, even if we wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. Gives you the best excuse to be a total hermit and just work and watch TV. So it could be worse, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, now we've bored everyone to tears with my moving story. Shall we dig into the subject of the episode, which
Let's do it.
How you built a team strategically. And I think if I give a bit of context, because that sounds like a really dull subject, but let's give it some context and why we sort of came up with this theme and wanted to dig into this. There is a huge trend on social media for outsourcing, and it seems to go, or at least in the, with the clients that I've worked with and the circles that I'm in and sort of the echo chamber I'm in, I suppose, it seems to be, I feel overwhelmed, therefore I'll outsource. Who do I outsource to? A VA or an OPA. And then 6 months down the line, there's I feel overwhelmed, but what else do I outsource? And it seems to be this kind of route that's well trodden that everybody takes, and there's not much thought goes into it sometimes, or strategic planning, which is what we want to talk about. And my background is in corporate, in HR operations, where I designed employment processes and performance management, all of those kind of things, and recruitment processes. And so I was living in that world for a long time, and now I'm seeing this in the small business social media world, and I'm like, what? Well, how is it happening like this? And so I guess what I really want to do is talk about how we should actually be hiring for the long-term benefit of our business, of ourselves, to get what we need out of it for our businesses and for ourselves. And by hiring, that can be physically bringing in an employee into the business, or an intern, or an apprentice, or something like that. Or it could be outsourcing. And obviously in the world that we live in, generally we start with outsourcing rather than recruiting, depending on the business we're building. But it tends to start there, doesn't it? They were the thoughts that were like running through my head these last few months. And then we chat obviously regularly, and you were telling me about the team you built, and I thought, who better to talk about this with than somebody who has built a team strategically and not gone down that well-trodden route of doing what everybody else does. So shall we go?
Let's do it. First of all, I'm so complimented that you think I've done this strategically, as I'm sure we'll dive into. It's just been a lot of just figuring it out as I go. But yeah, I would agree. This is a topic that I think doesn't get enough airtime, but I have seen completely transform my business. So yeah, I'd love to share more.
Yeah, and I think that's well, 2 things in there. One, I know we've had this conversation before. Like, you say you feel like you're winging it, but honestly, you have some kind of unconscious, intuitive business sense that helps you to make sensible decisions from the start. So there's that.
Thank you.
And then you're right, it doesn't get enough airtime, and actually it's so critically important.
Yeah.
for our businesses when we are looking to outsource or hire, and it can make or break the success of our businesses. And when a success in inverted commas, usually financial profit margins and growth type success, and it can make or break that. So it is really important, and you can share your experience with that as well.
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
Yeah. So first of all, why don't you tell us a bit about Alice Benham Limited, and what you do and the journey that it's been on from early days to today, what the differences are.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Alice Benham, as you'll probably be aware of at this point. The business's technical name is Alice Benham Limited, but I feel like saying that I'm Alice Benham, the founder and CEO of Alice Benham Limited, is slightly too much. The business is me, basically. And my business is business and marketing coaching, which is all about helping business owners to get strategic, level up what they do, and do that in a way that to them feels value driven and is done on their terms. So really passionate, and I know you are too, Steph, on the idea that actually success and values come hand in hand. You don't have to pick one or the other. Your business is more successful the more value driven it is. So yeah, through coaching, group programs, retreats, courses, podcasts, just trying to help people to do that. And it's safe to say I didn't wake up with that business. There's been a lot of evolving and changing that has led to that. So I stepped into business when I was 17. I began in social media management, and through burnout and starting again and pivoting over the years, I then moved into digital marketing coaching, and then have evolved into a business and marketing coach now. So I think 22 now, so just under 5 years in. And yeah, total privilege to do what I do. I love it.
It's awesome. And we've worked together. I've had coaching from you, and you're supporting me at the moment with a launch that I'm going to do. And I can honestly say, genius.
Thank you.
So yeah, really, really love what you do and the values that drive you to do what you do as well. So tell me a bit about the team that you have now, because you do have a small team working with you, don't you? So who have you got and what do they do?
I do indeed. So there are 4 of us, I'm going to say. So there's Emily, who's my kind of most frequent team member. Emily does content production, or podcast production, I should say. So she manages both of the podcasts that I host and does all of the back end stuff with that. And she also gets involved with group programs and courses. So she's often the kind of customer service friendly face when I'm teaching. She's frantically letting people into from the waiting room and sorting out all the email marketing on the back end. So she's kind of my right hand woman, and she's been the longest standing team member. She is salaried and she works with me 2 days a week, so she's the most consistent. She's PAYE. And then there are 2, soon to be 3 freelance team members. So there's Langer, who does content production. So Emily manages the podcast, but Langer does more kind of graphic design and SEO blog type things. Langer is on a freelance contract, so her work is kind of more dependent on what's going on in the business. And that's the same with my other freelance team member, who is Jess, and Jess does video production. So pretty much all their roles are around content, because that's such a big part of my business. And Jess, the same, she produces all the video content that comes out of my business. So obviously that has peaks and troughs depending on what's going on. And then the 4th team member, if you're not including me, is someone I'm onboarding at the moment who's a freelance copywriter. So they're going to take copywriting from me, as in I'm not going to have to do it, they're going to do it. And that again is going to be the same as Jess and Langer. So freelance contracts, and depending on what's going on in the business. So yeah, there's soon to be 5 of us, which is a little bit crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love the way that you have structured the team in a way that works for you. So making sure that they are, obviously sticking to the legalities of, PAYE when you have to, and making sure that's all legit, but also the hours and the frequency with which they work with you and the flexibility, so that I think often there's a misconception when you build a team that it has to be a permanent employed, and you have to be at a certain level with your income, and it puts people off, I suppose. And so the decisions then around, okay, who can I get on an hourly basis, usually a VA, or that maybe that's what drives the push into that area. But I love the way that you've built this team in a way that works for you, works for them, delivers what you all need. And gives you room to grow with them as well as your business.
Yeah.
grows.
That's completely it. Because I remember so clearly when I was realizing that I needed to build this team, thinking, oh, flip, I've got to pay someone a 36K a year salary suddenly. And I was like, well, that's a big jump to get to. But actually, when I realized, oh, no, there is a way of doing this where, yes, it is that team feeling, but it is scalable and it's working for both of us. Because ultimately, they're going to be the best team members for me when their role is working for them as well as working for me. And I think I knew from the early days it needs to be a way of having a team that is super flexible and scalable, because sometimes my business needs full team. We've got all hands on deck. There's tons to do. Sometimes it's just me on my own and I don't need any support. So I think it's quite complex, I think, for small businesses figuring out how to do team, but it's absolutely possible and so worth it. My business wouldn't be where it is now, and I wouldn't be enjoying my business like I do now without that team in place, for sure.
Yeah, agreed. And so tell me a bit about that. At what point did you realize that you needed to outsource the various roles? What were the triggers? What was happening in your business? What goals did you have? Like, what were your considerations really when you decided to outsource?
There was a really clear trigger point for me, I think. It was back in the spring of 2019 was when I first onboarded Emily, who is now my PAYE team member, or employee, I should say. And at that point, I was pretty much fully booked with coaching. Mm-hmm. I think I thought I was fully booked. I've probably been more fully booked since, but I felt like my time was at a cap in terms of that. And I was also ramping up for my first retreat, Gather and Grow. And I think the real trigger for me was that it was so much work pulling this retreat together. And I suddenly realized, flip, this business that I want to build, where it's not just me sat on Zoom coaching, there's retreats, group programs, courses. I didn't have any of those things at that point, but I knew that was where my business was going. I realized that I wasn't going to be able to do that just with myself. I think I knew very early on, with it being such a personal brand, with me being the only person that can deliver the impact that this business delivers, I am going to be a constant bottleneck. And that was definitely the first time I recognized that and went, flip, okay. I remember in the start of 2019, quarter one, because I do quarterly goals, my goals were all about automating. So I remember thinking, right, my time is, I've not got any more time to put into this business. First of all, let's see what we can automate and just streamline and make a little bit easier. And then I remember once I'd done all of that, as it happens, my time got filled up again. And I was like, oh, flip. Okay, well, here we go again. I haven't got time. Yeah. So then in Q2, it was like, okay, I think the next step is looking to outsource. And it was, in the run up to that retreat. And it was actually Emily's first week of work. The first time her and I met, she turned up at my retreat. Bless her, absolute baptism of fire, 15 quite established female entrepreneurs for 5 days. But yeah, haven't looked back since then, really. It's been a really good decision.
Good. There was a few interesting things in that I'm going to come back to, if that's all right. So
for sure.
I think one of them was the recognition that you're a bottleneck, or would be if you didn't get support. And then the goals, like you knew what you wanted your business to be, but there's almost a gap between, right, I'm here today and I'm the bottleneck, but I need to plug the gap so I can get to where I want to be. And that feels really risky, doesn't it? Because if you're plugging that gap with a person and therefore a cost, you basically have to spend before you've hit the financial goals that you need to be at in order to afford the person. But it's a bit chicken and egg. And so whenever you take someone on, even if it is outsourcing an hour at a time or whatever it is, there's always an element of risk. It doesn't matter how you do it. How did you get comfortable with that gap and the risk that came with it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'd recommend anyone else to do it this way, because I'm not sure it's the most sensible approach, but it's just always been in my nature to just take action and then almost deal with whatever consequence comes off the back of that. As you very kindly said, Steph, I think there is probably this quite strong underlying understanding of what is right and wrong for my business within me. So although I sound like I'm winging it, I think I knew, okay, this is going to be the right call. But yeah, it did feel a little bit scary because at that point I was living at home. So I wasn't paying myself a salary really at all. I was just taking bits and bobs out of the business. It was making money, but it I didn't have thousands sat in a bank account that was screaming at me, please spend me on a team member. It absolutely was that chicken and egg situation where I had to go, right, in order for this business to make more money, which for me, income and impact, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I have got to free up more of my time. And it did feel like that bit of a risk, but I think I just knew, look, I'm so in love with the potential of this business.
Yeah.
This is just what I have to do to get there. And I think you picked up it as well. You picked up on it as well. Having that clarity of what you want helps with that risk, because I appreciate for some business owners, they're fine being a bottleneck because they haven't got these, massively scaled long-term visions. And that's completely fine. If you want your business to always exist within the remit of what you can do, that's amazing. That's just not true for me.
Yeah.
I have real, high expectations of how my business is going to scale. And so I think I always understood, well, the biggest bottleneck is always going to be me.
Yeah.
Solving that bottleneck feels a bit scary, but I mean, what was the other option? It just felt like the right thing to do. And there was a few months once Emily was on board of like, can I pay your invoice? Was this the worst decision ever? But I'd say within 2 to 3 months, the results were really clear to me, and the knock-on effects of me getting that time back were already bringing more impact and income into the business. So yeah, did feel scary. But I think like a lot of things in business, it's just the possible long-term benefit has to outweigh that short-term comfort that you're letting go of.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, this is why we're talking about strategic hiring, isn't it? It's not reactive. It's not in response to something that's happening right now that we hadn't foreseen. This is here are my goals, here are my plans, here's where I'm going to take my business. And in order to do that, this is a thing that I need. In the same way that we would look at systems and making things teachable and repeatable and all of those things, a person and capacity therefore is something that goes hand in hand with scaling and growing your business. So when you look at it as a component of business growth, actually it feels less scary because it's just a step on the way, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just part of the process. And that doesn't mean that risk is taken away, but I think it puts it into context, doesn't it? It feels less like a red flag not to do it and more like it's just, okay, that's part of the process of doing that step.
Yeah, and I think if you can look beyond that, like you say, and look at what it opens up to you and the possibilities that it brings within your business, that's where you can get excited. And, when I work with clients on it, we look at the profitability of roles. So what could that role generate? Even if it's not directly client facing, it could be, as in your case, they're taking work away from you. So they're making your role more profitable. So you look at the profitability of roles as well, and what they could generate for you over a year or 3 or 5 years. And not the person, the role. That's really critical, like the role.
Yes.
Then that can also help you to make those financial decisions and recognize where those trigger points are for hiring. And when it's done, like you say, if you're following a process, you have a plan, you have a strategy, then it's just a matter of trusting the process, isn't it? And trusting that discomfort will lead to greater things. Whatever your measures of success are that you're aiming for, they'll help move you towards them.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like a muscle, right? The more that you take those scary steps and prove to yourself that good comes from it, I think the easier it becomes. That first hire was absolutely the scariest. And then bringing on teams since then hasn't really contained any fear, because I've seen the positive impact that bringing on board Emily has had. So then I'm like, of course I want more of that by bringing on Langer and Jess and this new person. I think doing it strategically is important 100%, because it is a big commitment. And I think almost acknowledging that helps as well. It is someone else's livelihood and their work and the knock-on effect of that you're claiming a bit of responsibility for. And I don't say that to scare people, but I think to take it seriously on both how it's going to work for you and for them, definitely from what I've seen kind of sets you up for that in the right way.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, just take it seriously and do the planning work to support it. So
absolutely.
Tell me why you went for the roles you went for and outsourced them versus what's, the commonly mentioned trends that we've noticed, which would be VA, OBM, and probably social media manager. I would put into that bracket of like just somebody to take the obvious work off you. So how do you assess the roles that or tasks that you needed to outsource, and why didn't you go for those obvious ones?
Yeah, so I guess starting with that first question of how I assessed it, was just a case of looking at where is my time being spent that it shouldn't be. You know, when you're the person you're the only person that can deliver the impact of your business. You know, I'm the coach, I'm the teacher, I'm the podcast host. That is the stuff that you can never give away. Everything apart from that in some way can be outsourced or given to someone else. And I think for me, it was just a case of looking, what is that biggest suck on my time? I'd already, like I said, in Q1, automated my client onboarding. So that kind of admin was as streamlined as it could be. And that's actually still something I've never outsourced, just because I find it easier to keep that in my control. And then the next biggest thing was the podcast production. I was at that point batching out 2 episodes a week, I think. It was making me work over weekends, evenings, early mornings. It was the thing that was tipping me over the edge, and I could see that, and it was very obvious to me that that was the trigger. So I think knowing what that need was quite clear, because for me that was just about being connected to where is my time going in this business, and where is my time best spent. You know, if it's not, those two things aren't the same, probably means you need to outsource some of the spaces where your time is going. And then in terms of knowing that I wanted it to be this model of team members instead of your classic approach, I think for me, it was just a given that I was going to do it that way. I don't remember particularly, you know, weighing up the pros and cons. I think when I thought about what I wanted for my business, I wanted a team. I've always used that language, that they're not employees, I'm not their manager, we're a team and they're my team members. And I'm really passionate about building a business where it feels collaborative. And I fully appreciate no one is going to care as much about my business as I do. That is something that will never be the case, because I do anything for my business. But I want people that are as invested as possible and that feel that sense of ownership. And I guess I just, you know, wrote it off subconsciously, because I knew that if it were to be someone where I'm outsourcing to them instead of they're coming into my business and we're working together, it wasn't going to feel that way. You know, to them, I would be a contract. And I appreciate for some businesses that absolutely works, but for what I was looking for, that wasn't it. I also knew I really wanted Emily's role to scale. I had that long-term vision. I could see how it was going to go. I think the contract she came on board with was about half a day a week. And I knew it was going to need to scale from there. And, you know, when you're working with a VA or an OBM, they've got other clients. You're not necessarily able to have more of their time when you need it. And I wanted someone who had the capacity and the willingness to grow their role as the business grew. So yeah, it was just a given really that was going to look like team members. And then it was just a case of figuring out, right, how do I have a team member when I can't have someone full-time on a salary? What does that look like? But yeah, that's a format that I now love, because it does feel like that team. People work incredibly independently. I don't feel like I'm ever managing people. And they feel that sense of ownership. It doesn't feel like they're doing something for my business. It feels like they're a part of what is helping this business to grow, which is really important to me, because I guess I feel that ownership and I want them to get in on that as well.
And I think that is, I mean, this is a whole subject on its own in terms of like motivating people and and employee engagement and all of those things. Having worked on the employee engagement scheme for a large team in a global telecoms company, trying to engage already disengaged employees to give more, because essentially employee engagement in the corporate world is how can I get more out of these people? That's what they mean. They don't really care. It's just how can we get more out of them and stop them leaving and taking all their knowledge with them. The key is making them feel valued and not micromanaged, I suppose. So they're not feeling like they're constantly being watched. They're appreciated, they're valued, and they get on well with their line manager in inverted commas. And I think the model that you're building is the best way to get a highly motivated, engaged, genuine team built that works well together. And like I said, it's a whole subject on its own for another day and another podcast. But I think, really commend you for that, because thinking outside of the traditional employment box, but actually looking at what's best for your business, but equally what's best for them as well. And making sure it works for everybody is not a line of thinking that most employers take. So
yeah, and I wonder if actually part of my reason for going down this route is because I've never been in that traditional employment. So I have never had an experience of that kind of corporate way of working. So it's just not natural to me. You know, I hear a lot of people who have done that transition from corporate to business. There are so many things that you carry with you, you know, assumptions, that's the best way to do it, or you got to do it that way, that's right or that's wrong. And I'm very grateful in a way that I don't have that, because I think it's allowed me a lot of the time to make decisions purely based off of what is best, with none of those shoulds or, you know, that's what's right, that's what's wrong attached to it. And ultimately, I think for me, it was thinking, well, what do I love about my work? I'm passionate about it. I feel invested in it. I enjoy it. Well, that's what I want my team members to feel as well. I want them to feel in on that. And yeah, it's been, I would now say, I'm like every small business, I'm like, do it this way. It's so joyful. And it's, yeah, I mean, I can't speak for my team, but I think they're doing all right.
Yeah, well, they seem to be. They always say good things. And I think I work with a few people who are building teams or have teams, and the amount of problems that can come up if you don't have that kind of relationship with them, it can be really difficult. And then you fall into performance management as is known in the performance management world. And there are some legalities around it, obviously, but I think that open environment, if you can create that from the word go, where they feel trusted and valued, and it's a space for them to grow and explore and actually bring their own entrepreneurial spirit, because all of your team members are entrepreneurial in their own right, aren't they?
Yeah.
And so they can bring that into your business and they're allowed to explore with that. That's a fantastic way to really get the best out of them, and them likewise out of your business for them too.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. So basically you wanted room to grow and people that could be team members rather than outsourcing, sending work off and not seeing it again until it had been done and come back.
Yeah.
Got you. I like that.
Much more succinct than my summary.
No, I like it. And I think, there's nothing wrong with that. So I have a business manager and I do give her tasks on a project chart, and they're simple things that she can go away and do, and they take them off my plate. And then I things like sending client welcome gifts, there's no need for me to sit and order them and do that. She can do that. But equally, there's stuff that I wouldn't necessarily send because she isn't close enough to my business yet. And I think building those relationships, like you say, you want people to be inside your business to really know how it should be delivered, understand your values, and deliver things with the same values that you deliver them with.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a big part of it as well, is realizing in a small business, your brand and how you make people feel and the way that you do things is so important. It's the one thing that is definitely going to put you above or just, make you stand out in whatever space that you're in. And I think because I've always had such a personal brand, it was really important to me, hey, if anyone else is going to start doing things for this business and impacting the output, I need to know and trust that they're going to bring that same level of care to it, in the same way that I feel everything I do, the way that I write emails, how on time I am to a Zoom call, whatever, all reflects my business and my brand. I want the team to do that as well. Probably what's within this is that I'm a bit of a control freak, and the thought of letting someone who's not fully invested in my business affect my business's output, well, that terrifies me, because what if they do something that isn't on brand and has a negative impact? And that's, a really horrible thought for me. So yeah, I think that the closer those people can be to you, the more you can make sure that what they're doing is as close to the way that you would do it, if not better, because hey, hire people that are better than you at what they do.
Absolutely. Great. totally support that. And I guess that leads into my next point, which was, you mentioned that you looked at all the stuff that you were doing that you didn't need to do.
Yes.
So it was, you identified what you should do as business owner, what you had to do as the business owner, founder, whatever you want to call yourself. And then you looked at the things that could be, I keep saying outsourced, but could be given to a team member.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the way that I work through it with clients, is map out all of the skills that are required in your business. So if it's just you at the moment, you'll know them inside out, even if you don't think you do, because you'll be doing them every single day. or at least every single month, you'll be going through the full set of skills. So if you write them down, I tend to bunch them into 3 different categories. One is service delivery, client delivery, product delivery, whatever you want to call it, everything that falls into that category. One is business development. So everything you do in order to grow your business, whether that be content production or networking or however your business development plan looks, that's what goes into there. And then the business owner stuff. So like the stuff you do to keep your business moving every day. So whether that be invoicing, sorting out your strategy, your plans, your goals for the next quarter, doing your day-to-day bookkeeping, or whatever it is. There are many, many hats that we wear, and they're the 3 different categories that I tend to chunk everything out into. And then from there, the exercise you did. So what do I, out of all of that, what do I have to do in order, as a business owner, either because it literally relies on me to deliver it. So in your example, nobody else can do the coaching you do because people work with you because you are you, and somebody else wouldn't be you, and therefore they wouldn't work with them. So that stuff, but then also the stuff that should sit with you. So as a business owner, and you will know this, we've had this conversation, the strategy should always sit with you. The goal planning should always sit with you. That's not to say you don't collaborate, you don't have conversations with people. You might, I work with people on their strategies. You might work with a consultant on it, but the responsibility always sits with you. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other stuff. So once you've kind of pulled out your role, and you can even create a role profile if you really want to, of like of what your job looks like, then you're left with the stuff that can be turned into roles and outsourced when the time is right.
And it's about knowing that stuff, isn't it? I think when you're often in the place where you suddenly go, oh my gosh, I need team, I need to outsource, you're so overwhelmed by how much there is to do, and that's been the trigger point for you, that it can be hard to get that clarity. And I think that's as well, I guess, where that strategic element comes in, is almost trying to foresee those times and not doing that panic of, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed, I need someone, what am I going to do? I don't even know what I need them to do because I don't even know what's going on right now. Actually, if you do it in that more strategic and, kind of chilled out way, you have the time and the headspace to figure out, where is my time going? How much of that doesn't need to be done by me? Okay, now let's do this strategically. Don't get me wrong. I've had like Jess as a hire. She was one of those panic ones where I should have seen it coming. I didn't. Thank heavens it was the right timing for her, and she could suddenly take on this big contract. But definitely what I've learned is, the more, I guess, proactive and kind of far in advance, you'll have better words than me for what I'm trying to explain. You could do it. The more strategic it is, because you're actually being logical about what you need and not just putting a band-aid on it and going, I need help, let's quickly get someone in. From what I've seen, that doesn't always give you the most long-term, not results, but long-term solution. That's what I'm trying to say.
And I think often what happens with that is you hire based on emotion, right? So you are like in a situation, and the stuff that's tipping you over the edge might be the stuff that you could easily do if something else was taken off your plate. And I was actually just thinking of my own situation. I was like, I had this great content plan, and I'm like, yes, I'm going to do all of this, and it was awesome. And then I'm like sitting down to write a blog, and it literally takes me 4 hours to write a semi-decent blog. Like, it's ridiculous. I'm such a slow writer. And it was taking all my time, and I'm literally taking a week, a month to write all my content. And I'm like, I just can't do this. It's not sustainable for my business. If I actually want to grow my business, I can't dedicate a week to creating content. But the things that were tipping me over the edge were like admin things. So it would be the basics of, I don't know, sending out contracts to people, signing them up, or keeping my bookkeeping up to date, or my financial software up to date, and things like that. And I'd be like, oh my goodness, like really getting stressed out about them. And it wasn't until I stepped back and actually worked out what was going on that I was like, actually, if I just outsource my marketing strategy and blog writing, because, you know, in line with the marketing strategy and for SEO and all that and keywords, it was all taking so much time. If I outsourced that, everything else becomes easier.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I'd done it based on my emotions and been like, I hate doing admin, I probably would have outsourced to a VA or, you know, my business manager or something, and I would still have the problem of content creation.
Yeah, that's such a good example of where, yeah, the thing that you maybe think is the issue isn't necessarily it. Like I remember when I was hiring for Langer, so that was the second team member to bring on board, I did a month's worth of time tracking. So I just got the Toggle app and I was time tracking everything I was doing. Was I on Instagram? Was I on Canva? Was I coaching? And that was so eye-opening, because you might think you know where your time goes, but until you actually track it in some way or just take that step back like you did to get that clarity, you often don't know the real situation. And, you know, the best decisions are informed ones. So I think before you make a decision, it's always informing yourself of actually, what are we dealing with? So therefore, what's going to be the best solution to help with that? And it's so much easier to make the right hire once, right? Rather than make a mistake. Oh my gosh, I've had not ever the wrong hire, but just we've had to change things because I didn't get it right the first time. And that enough is, oh my gosh, that's so much work. So the thought of getting it completely wrong and having to change that, I don't think it's worth it.
And like you say, when you hire or when you outsource or however you want to build your team, you bear some responsibility to those people, right? Especially if you hire. I mean, that goes without saying, but even if you're outsourcing on a contract and you're taking up a day to 5 days of people's time in a month, you shouldn't do it lightly, because that's their livelihood. And so if it's strategic, it's always going to be better for everybody, in, you know, in the long-term view. How do you feel that hiring strategically has impacted your business? Like, what are the tangible benefits you've felt from getting the right people in at the right time?
I mean, I don't think my business would be anywhere near where it is right now if I didn't have the team that I do, because my output is huge, but it's because so much of that doesn't come from me. So, I mean, it's clear from bringing Emily on board, at that point, I had one-on-one coaching and a retreat. Now, and I know you know this as well, Steph, I think there's 12 different offerings. There's a product range, there's courses, there's group programs, there's ongoing programs. And the only reason that I've been able to scale in that way and add more offerings in and help people more is because my time in the other areas of my business has been minimized. And also I've had team members that have helped with all of the work that is involved in doing that scaling. So for example, the course that I've just launched about launching, Jess, my video editor, she spent 2 full weeks editing that course and getting that ready to go. So if I were to have to do that work myself and I could realistically dedicate, you know, a day a week to doing that, it would have taken me almost 10 weeks to just get that initial work together. So even that alone, you think, well, that's fast tracked that. And then think of all the work that I've been able to do instead of doing that video editing. So yeah, I mean, the income of the business, I think when I brought Emily on board, that year was maybe 30 to 40,000 pounds revenue. This financial year, we're aiming for 150. So already, you know, that's obviously a huge shift, which wouldn't have been possible without that team. So I think in the hard numbers, a huge amount, but also in terms of my enjoyment as the business owner, it's been huge as well. It's not something I've always valued, but nowadays it is. I value my experience as a business owner, my happiness, my joy, how I'm finding things. And having a team on board has just massively increased that, because I don't feel like I'm on my own. You know, it feels so much more fun. It feels so much more exciting. I have that great feeling that it's helping other people's lives and impacting them as well. So yeah, I mean, I could go on about it all day, but exponentially it's made such a difference. And it is something that I have not regretted in any way. There's been a lot of learning curves, and bless the team, they've been very open and willing for their roles to evolve and shift and change quite quickly, because the nature of my business is that a lot of things do happen quite quickly and I do learn by action. So I'm very grateful to them for that. But yeah, it's been the best thing.
Yeah. And there's so much in what you've just said to unpack.
Sorry.
I know, it's good. I love it. So if we'll start with the hard numbers, because I think, when we think about hiring, the initial thought process is around money, right? So it's how much is it going to cost? How much am I going to get from it? Unless they're a salesperson, there's very little direct correlation that you can tangibly measure, especially if they are more like your whole team. None of them are client facing, right?
Nope.
None of them are actually out there earning money for you. They are simply creating products or parts of products and capacity for you within your business to drive income.
Yeah. So when I brought Emily on board, it's really interesting, actually. I was coaching one-on-one 2 days a week, and that's still what I do. So my one-to-one hours have been the same over the last 2 years coming up. What the team have done is allow me, in the 3 days that I'm not coaching, to not be doing all of the content creation, admin, podcast production, bookkeeping, and use that time to develop programs, to work on product ranges, to bring out new courses. So I think that is, the clearest way I can see it is that without a team, I'd be coaching 2 days a week and doing coaching admin and business admin 3 days a week. With a team, I get to coach 2 days a week and then spend 3 days a week doing all of the other things that actually help my business to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really important lesson, isn't it? They can either directly generate revenue for you, or they can facilitate revenue generation. And particularly with the business model that you have, where you're creating passive income channels or streams and programs, which with uncapped numbers on all of those things, it means that your revenue is uncapped. The potential is uncapped just by growing your team and creating capacity for you to be able to develop these things. So it really is the key that unlocks the business growth with a business model like yours.
Absolutely. And it's a constant thing. I can feel myself already being like, all right, we're about to hit another bottleneck. What's the next thing? How do we keep giving things away? And I think it's just, making my workload more and more focused on the delivery of the business and the working on that's, like you said, that goal setting and strategic planning, and just making things as lean as possible and getting rid of as much as I can.
Yeah.
So,
and really, we started our business because we love doing the thing we do. We never started it to be a bookkeeper or to create Canva posts, or they're not the reasons that we started our business. They're what you end up doing because you wear all the hats. But actually, if you can structure things viably so that you can get back to doing what you love, that's where you have a thriving business.
Absolutely.
And then your well-being, as you were saying earlier, your well-being just rockets, doesn't it? And your own mental health and sense of purpose and enjoyment from the business then increase because you're back doing what you love and spending more time doing it.
Yeah, so true. The more time that you get to be doing the stuff that you really want to be doing, the more your business is going to thrive in every direction. And for me, bringing on a team just allows you to do more of that whilst helping other people in the process, which is a crazy thought to me. You're paying part of their bills with your business. I try not to think about it too much. It freaks me out, but it is cool.
It is. Yeah, I love that. And I think what's important to say is, we've talked a lot about content creation and outsourcing or building a team in that space. It could literally be anything. And every business owner, when they sit and do that skills list and decide what their role is and then think about what to outsource, is going to look different for everybody.
Yes.
And also where you place the importance. So maybe for you, the important thing to get help with is the admin. Because that's the thing that you just despise, and it's just destroying your joy in your business, and you can move it on and spend time creating content because you've got that skill set or whatever it is. We're not saying that any role is bad to hire or outsource to, or any role is good to hire and outsource to. It's simply find what works for your business.
Yes, that's such a good point, because I think it is very easy with a topic like this to have a load of shoulds. You know, for example, I still do all my client onboarding. And I've had a lot of people be like, why are you doing that? Like, you've got a team, it's quite easy to, and I'm just like, well, for my business, it makes sense because that's something that I like to have control of. I quite like doing it. So it's staying. And I think giving yourself permission, to know what is and isn't right for your business is really important, because ultimately that's what's going to help your business to grow. The more decisions that you can make that are in line with what's right for you, the more your business is going to be moving in that direction, which is ultimately what we all want. So I think total permission to do it in a way that is a right fit for you, and ignore all the people that are telling you to do X, Y, and Z.
I think that is the perfect message to end this part of the podcast on.
I love it.
It was a great summary. So love that. Thank you.
That's so interesting of a topic, though. My favorite thing is when I get to speak about a topic that I've never spoken about on a podcast before. And this is an absolute first. So thank you for making such an interesting chat.
Yeah, well, I'm particularly passionate about it because I see it done so badly all the time.
I love it. We're so nerdy, Steph. Whenever we hang out, people will be like, you lot are losers. We're just talking about like business strategy all the time. That's what gets us.
Sad but true.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the final part, which is a few questions that I'm going to ask everybody. You're the first one to go through them. So you're the first, Mark.
Exciting. No pressure.
Okay, so what is the biggest plot twist you've had in your business so far?
There's definitely been a fair few. I'd say the most significant would have to be I launched an online shop in the spring of 2019, just after Emily was onboarded, and it absolutely flopped. I thought that I'd landed on the next best thing for my business. I was fully booked with coaching, so I was like, look, let's make some digital products, let's make PDFs and guides and digital downloads. People did not want it. I didn't launch it properly because I wasn't that excited about it, and it was just the most failed launch and new thing I've ever had in my business. And at that point I was super anti-course. I was like, I'm never going to do a course. Courses aren't for me. Well, don't say that on a podcast, folks, because there's a lot of hypocritical Alice Benham content out there. And it was actually that failure which then led to my first ever group program, which at that point was called the 6-week thing, which you took part in, Steph. And that group program was 100% the point where my business really began to scale, find its feet, take off, establish itself, however you want to phrase it. Because that's how I learned, this is how my business scales. It's these group programs, it's, support, education, accountability, expertise all in one. It's scalable, it's accessible. But I would have never landed on that launch if I didn't have that massively failed idea earlier in the year. So at the time, it felt like a pretty sore loser moment, but looking back, it was, I think the moment that things really started to shift.
I love that. I love it because I love that, we often view failure as an end, right?
Yeah.
And failure only is failure if it is the end. But when
so true.
It is a learning and it is a catalyst into something that has changed your business, right? So your business is now scaling incredibly because of this learning that you would never, or at least wouldn't have discovered at that point unless your initial idea didn't work.
Yes. I think sometimes you've got to make the wrong decision to figure out what the right one is. And that was absolutely one of them. And now I'm like, thank you, very failed launch and embarrassing moment. You have helped me a lot.
I love that. And I think when we can thank our failures, we've actually stopped them being failures and turned them into an incredibly important part of our business.
Absolutely. I'm here for that.
Yeah, same. Okay, next question. The worst business advice you've ever received?
Oh, there's so many to pick from. That sounds awful. I would say, probably the worst, and it's not that it's not for everyone, it's just that it's not for me, was when I hired or worked with a business coach at some point in the last year. I won't say when, because I've had a few business coaches I've worked with in the last year, and I don't want anyone to think it might be them. They won't be listening to this, I'm sure. And their advice to me was to basically build this really funnel driven business. Now, I don't have an issue with funnels that are done in a value driven way, but it was all of this ickiness, or for me, what felt like ickiness of like tripwires and like sending people, pretending that you've sent people the wrong email so that it catches their attention, and then it's then selling something to them and upselling. And in my group programs, I should hold back on the final bit of content and then sell that to them at the end as the next thing. And oh my Lord, I was just sat there like, this is basically a list of every reason that I dislike the industry that I'm in. So quite a long-winded answer, but yeah, that was an interesting experience.
Yeah. And like you say, works for some people, but I am 100% with you on that one.
It feels
icky.
Very, very icky. I'm not here for that. Not for me. But yeah, I mean, there's a long list of weird advice, but I think that was the most interesting one, because they were speaking to me. You know, I've had a lot of offhand advice of like, oh, you should pretend that when I was younger, you should pretend that you're not 17, or you should get a man involved so people trust you more. And I'm like, well, they didn't really know me. So I'm like, fine, we'll just put you off as an idiot. But this person like properly asked questions about what was important to me and still gave that advice, which slightly baffled me. So yeah, that's my winner.
Right. Well, now we know what you won't be doing.
Yes. It was a good exercise for that, to be fair. I felt very clear afterwards on my values. So maybe it was a positive thing. It was helpful.
I like that. Find a positive in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And final question, which shouldn't be so hard, is what's next for Alice Benham Limited?
I mean, I've probably mentioned it enough times in this episode. The launching course. I mean, when is this coming out, this episode? When will people be listening?
That is a really good question. I'm aiming for February. If you're listening in April, like, don't laugh at me. I'm aiming for February, but who knows what will happen.
You said it now, Steph. You've got this. Yeah, I mean, I barely know. Like, I always know the next thing, but I never know what's after that point. So there will be a launching course live when this comes out. And who knows what else. I feel like this year I'm just open to whatever comes. So come to my Instagram. You'll see there's something going on, I'm sure.
Brilliant. And tell us where to find you.
Yes. So my main hangout is Instagram. I'm at Alice_Benham. Love talking as honestly as I can about my experience of running a business and just documenting that. And then I've actually got 2 podcasts, because apparently I can't get enough of my own voice. So one called Starting the Conversation, which go and listen to the episode that I did with Steph. It was number 101, 10 out of 10 episode. I know, good number, right?
Well remembered.
It's very good. And then I only remember it because it's such a good number. And then I've got another podcast called Wish We Knew with my friend Vix, where we talk about, you guessed it, what we wish we knew about running businesses. So come and say hi.
Yeah. And I obsessively listen to Starting the Conversation. I'm yet to listen to the other one, but yeah, highly recommend.
Thank you.
Not just the episode I'm on, but all of them, because there are some incredibly interesting conversations.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to listening to the rest of your podcast.
Yes.
This has been fun.
Can't wait to record it.
You got this.
Cool. Well, thank you very much again.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks for listening or watching. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned something new. If you'd like to chat about anything you've heard, you'll find me on Instagram at Innovate and Thrive Co. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on our next episode. Take care.